Another group of the electorate that former President Trump has captured the majority of, white evangelicals. In both 2016 and 2020, he had about 80% of their vote. But the Harris campaign is working to change that. It's also working overtime to get black churchgoers engaged and vote this time around. Over the weekend, the Harris campaign launched the Souls to the Polls effort, with the VP speaking at a church in Greenville, North Carolina. And she focused on the misinformation being given to folks in the hurricane-ravaged state.
Fellow Americans are experiencing some of the most difficult moments in their lives. Yet instead of offering hope, there are those who are channeling people's tragedies and sorrows into grievance and hatred. And one may ask why, and I think sadly, frankly, the motives are quite transparent: to gain some advantage for themselves, to play politics with other people's heartbreak, and it is unconscionable.
Joining us now, Adrienne Bankert of NewsNation's One Nation Under God. You know, one thing, Adrienne, I noticed in the last few months as we were leading up to the election is you weren't hearing a lot about faith on the campaign trail, and that was from either candidate. And traditionally, when you look back at presidential campaigns, it's central, but it's not this time. You talked to the head of the Evangelicals for Harris leader. What did he tell you about where their head is right now?
Well, it's interesting because this gentleman, Reverend Jim Ball, he says that the Evangelicals for Harris movement, it started out as Evangelicals for Biden, but obviously something had to change there, right? And his thinking is it's a very diverse group of people, and that he can't say that there's a one-size-fits-all for evangelicals who would choose to select someone who is not pro-life. She's definitely made reproductive health her stance. And so it's going to be a unique kind of person who decides to say, my faith is important, and that's why I'm selecting Harris. It was not what I expected. I learned a lot from the conversation.
Well, and the abortion discussion has become more nuanced, right? And there's a lot of layers to how people think about that issue, and women's rights and reproductive rights. How does that factor in to the evangelicals that you have talked to?
Well, for this group in particular, as opposed to most traditional evangelicals or people of the Christian faith, because abortion is such a central idea, that was one of my first questions I asked him. And he said that because there was not an anti-abortion candidate, you know, President Trump has said that he was for abortion in certain situations.
Right.
He sent it back to the states. He actually said that it was about choosing the person who was the most pro-family. And he said that person is Vice President Harris, because she has an economic plan in mind for families, to lower the cost at the grocery store, to allow for people to afford a house. But I want to play actually one of the sound bites from our interview. You can hear from him exactly what he's thinking.
Because there's not an anti-abortion candidate in this race, and because the Republican platform also is not an anti-abortion platform, the Trump folks made sure to pull out all that language, which was very disappointing to a lot of pro-life advocates. Because of these things, we are suggesting, hey, take a look at it in terms of who is the most pro-family candidate in the race. And we believe that the most pro-family candidate is Vice President Harris, no doubt about it.
I thought it was interesting that he chose to select economic policies as a way to say pro-family. I thought that was a fascinating, it's a departure from what most people in the faith community centrally believe in.
Yeah, it's two completely different issues, right?
For most people. Yeah.
Interesting. One other thing that you talked to him about, and this is a huge ethical issue, and I appreciate that you aren't afraid to talk to him about sexual diversity and some of the policies around it. Specifically, what did he say about gender identity and how they identify with Harris on this issue?
I think this is something that a lot of us need to pay a lot more close attention to and not be afraid to discuss. Because for so many families in the faith community, this is tied to, in a sense, the open door that abortion allowed for, when it was okay as a teenager to get an abortion and not tell your parents. The school didn't have to report it. When, you know, for years, we haven't had that reproductive health conversation in the way that it applies to parental rights. Now you can have a child who wants to identify with a different gender, and the parents don't have to be told. So for a lot of Christians, this is central to supporting the family, because you're telling mom and dad and keeping them in the loop. I had to ask him about it. It's the big thing, and here's what he said. Let's listen.
I'm just deeply concerned in these conversations and this attention on these small groups of people who are some of the most vulnerable people in our society. I'm very deeply concerned about people, scoring political points off of, creating fear about these small groups of people. And would Jesus be in favor of that? I don't think so.
He called it a political cudgel, in fact, when he talked to me. And I think that for so many families, they're saying this is not about scoring points. This is about having a conversation about what place do mom and dad have in the lives of their children. And I asked him point blank, I said, listen, you're talking about a vulnerable minority population, but what about Christians who would look at your movement to have Evangelicals for Harris and say, our children are the vulnerable population that we're concerned about? So you can watch the entire conversation. We talk about uncomfortable issues. I was very grateful for him being open. But when it comes to the faith conversation, I think that Kamala Harris has a long way to go. The vice president really making that conversation more broad when she went to the Black church this weekend. But this is 3 weeks from the election. If you look at President Trump's rallies, he always opens with a prayer. He had Greg Laurie, a very famous evangelist, speak at his last rally at Coachella. He's talked about faith more than any other president since Franklin Roosevelt, according to the statistics that I've read. So it's a matter of what part of the conversation you're listening to and how much you're exposed to these particular candidates. I think that Vice President Harris is going to have to address some of these issues at some point if she's going to reach the church.
Wow, fascinating. All right, Adrienne, thank you. Appreciate you stopping by this morning. And you can watch the full conversation, Adrienne's exclusive series, One Nation Under God, on YouTube. Scan the QR code on your screen. There's a new episode every single week. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.